and welcome friends. This module 5 is dealing with landfills for the management of municipal solid waste. Whereas under this third module is focusing on planning and siting of the landfills. In this particular presentation, we'll discuss about the impacts of improper landfilling practices, important planning aspects, general factors affecting the site selection, steps for the selection of the landfill sites, and brief review of the various methods adopted for the landfilling. So as you learn the content, you will be able to explain important planning aspects, steps and factors for the selection of the landfill site, and various forms that are adopted for landfilling. I am referring to MSW rules as well as Urban Development Department provisions in order to decide the various factors. So for more details, please refer to CPHEO manual. So as we discussed previously, landfilling is the ultimate disposal process. We wish to have the setup, waste processing as well as recycling facilities. Usually, inert waste occupies 40 to 55% of the total landfilling value. This is the major factor while planning the landfilling, which is selection of site, design of facilities, and specification for landfilling, which will be in consideration with the available piece of the land. So we have to take into account the pollution prevention, water quality monitoring, ambient air quality monitoring. Also, as we discuss about the green cover, you have to take into account the plantation at the landfill site and closure of the landfill site as well as post-closure plans, the way we discussed in the previous presentation. Naturally, we are very much interested in protecting natural as well as human habitat. As well, here we have to take into account the various governmental provisions and the requirement of State Urban Development Department, Town and Country Planning, Aviation Like Authority or Groundwater Board and such things. So these specific provisions are to be implemented as per Municipal Solid Waste Rules. Their provisions say currently 2016 and need to be ensured during the planning, designing as well as operating, construction and even the post-closure facilities. The design of the landfilling will be discussing shortly. However, you have to think about some aspects such as for sanitary landfill, we assume the active period to be 10 to 25 years, whereas we have to have the closure and post-closure plan ready for next 25 years. Also, you have already discussed about the waste generation, its composition and the trends that are occurring over the regions as well as the factors that are affecting the solid waste generation, and hence we have to take into account the current generation plus anticipated increase based on the trend and the population growth. Also, one must accommodate the essential components the way we discussed in the previous presentation: cover, density, compaction, settlement as well as certain allied infrastructure in order to run and maintain that facility. So we can take into account these particular sanitary landfills in three forms, say for small, which has the requirement less than 5 hectares, medium 5 to 20 hectares, large more than 20 hectares. During the design stages, we can adopt the height in the various lifts as 5 to 30 meter. Additional features that may be considered that we have to take into account the access roads, weighing scales, certain offices, inspection mechanisms, storages, and similar aspects that have been included under this point. Some of the things already we have discussed about. As we discussed previously, landfill is an unavoidable functional element currently as far as municipal solid waste management is concerned. Its planning, designing, construction, operation, and maintenance involves various technical skills in addition to the safety measures for the protection of the individuals working on that site as well as in general environment. So some of the points that we had touched were groundwater contamination, surface water contamination, air pollution, odor nuisance, health hazards due to rodents, pests, bird menace, surface as well as grade failure, erosion, loss of property value. So here just one can think of say there could be certain spontaneous fires, there could be certain odor nuisance, there could be health hazards associated with the attraction of rodents, pests, birds, etc. And hence the property nearby would naturally lose the value. Hence the loss of the property can also be one of the points. Because of the frequent fires, there is a generation of the smoke, hence the air pollution related issues are obviously there. But if you consider, one of the important considerations is the reduction in visibility in nearby areas, especially in early morning and in the evening. Hence, as far as practices for the selection of the site is concerned, one must take into account all the aspects. So, these rules 2016 provides the comprehensive regulations on the siting, design and operation of sanitary landfills. So these are some of the points that are suggested by various authority. So this landfill identification is expected to be done by development authorities or urban local bodies. It can be in consideration with a nearby waste processing plant, or it could be integral part of it. But one must think that this kind of the facility should be away from habitation clusters, forest areas, water bodies, monuments, national parks, wetlands, and certain places of important cultural, historical, and religious interest. Also, if such kind of the facility is intended to be sited near airport or the airbase, and if that particular distance is within 20 kilometers, one has to obtain the permission from the aviation authority. Already we discussed about this particular design life of 20 to 25 years, and one must think at least 1 year design life. Haul distance should be optimum because it is directly related with the operational cost. Soil conditions and topography are more related with the seepage as well as the contamination of the ground, underground water sources, as well as we discussed about the intermediate layers or the layers in between the cells, top cover, bottom stabilization layer. So we need cover material for the various aspects. So accordingly, the soil condition should be favorable, topography should be favorable in order to make that cover material available. Surface water hydrology is important in view of the drainage requirements. Geological and hydrological conditions are also important because various cells need to be resting on the bed that we wish to prepare. So the leachate as well as the settlement and such aspects need to be studied. The climatic logic conditions are important in view of surface runoffs as well as protecting the nearby land, water resources, and even the agricultural land. The local environmental conditions needs to be considered because of the control to be established, and ultimate use of the site is also one of the considerations because we wish to have that particular site subjected to some beneficial use of the society. There could be some specific criteria as far as selection of the landfill sites if number of options are concerned. Say for example, if we have some 4 to 8 landfill site options available, so we can think of setting certain locational criteria the way we considered about the haul distance. We can identify the search area, say for within the radius of 5 to 10 kilometers. We can shortlist certain potential sites and the data can be collected in view of the various points that we discussed on the previous slide, topographical, soil, etc. So for that, even the satellite imagery can be providing at a glance data. We can have certain best ranked site out of the options have been studied by conducting environmental impact assessment as well as social acceptance and the accessibility and the economics involved for the usage of that site, and finally we can have that particular site selected and one can start acquisition of the land according to the procedures. Sometimes the options may not be many, so we can set up the locational criteria, relevant data can be collected the way we discussed. We can carry out the environmental impact assessment and finally the site could be selected. Here one must take into account certain thumb rule. Say for example, for 300 tons per day, 30 hectares of the land is required for design life of 20 years. One must not go for lesser capacity than the 100 tons per day because it would be costly affair and it won't be techno-economically viable project. Certain locational criteria can be considered as given by CPHEO manual. So permission should be sought. It should not be within 200 meters from the water body like lake or pond, 100 meters from the river and streams, 500 meters from water supply wells. The site under consideration should be above 100-year high flood level and special care should be taken if the groundwater table is less than 2 meters below the ground level. It should be away by 200 meters from the state and national highway, 500 meters from the habitable area, and it should not be within the critical habitat as well as the wetlands. It should be 300 meters away from the public parks. As well, it should not be within the limits prescribed by Ministry of Environment and Forest, Pollution Control Board, as well as even the Aviation Authority. It should not be within the coastal regulation, unstable as well as buffer zone, especially unstable. Say we can consider earthquake prone zones because we don't want to lose the stability of the 25-meter high landfill. Buffer zone, certain intentionally maintained zone to protect the core areas, say away from critical habitat and accordingly. So say for area which is I think less than 25 hectares, 5 kilometers all around peripheral distance can be maintained, whereas for areas more than 25 hectares, some 10 kilometers zone need to be maintained. So these are certain location criteria for landfill sites. Briefly, we had touched about these particular landfilling sections when we got introduced with the concept of landfilling. However, depending on the topography, there could be many options and the combinations of the various configurations depending on the personnel they are available with the urban local bodies. So these landfills can be placed above the ground fields, they can be placed below the ground, in the form of trench, pit, and similar. Along the slope, it can be set. Along the valley, it can be set, or there could be combination of that. Needless to say, being the environmental engineer, any combination that one is expecting should not cause any kind of environmental loss as a basic guideline. So, for example, construction of landfill on the hill should be avoided. It is quite natural that the surface runoff would be more as the rainwater, storm water is received at the top, and as it sifts down or moves along the surface, it would be the source of pollution for another valuable resources. So that's why one must take into account certain general guidelines while deciding about the forms. So here you can see it could be trench, pit, which is ideally suited where the adequate depth of the cover material is available and the water table is deep. Along the slope and depression where the natural or artificial depression exists. The figures I have taken from the Wavy, so you can read more about that. Even Sincero could be helpful in order to get some sufficient background related with these sketches. So area method, excavation is practically not possible. So under that circumstances, one can have certain, the site under consideration fenced, and accordingly various cells and lifts can be designed in consideration with the availability of the area. So here, as the ground is not excavated in this method, soil usually must be hauled to the site from some other locations. So this is one of the limitations as far as area method is concerned. So under this particular presentation, we discussed many things about the planning as well as the siting of the landfills. I hope most of the points that I tried to point out are clear to you. So thanks for your attention. As we move ahead, now we wish to discuss about additional controls in view of, say, leachate gas management for sanitary landfills. So bye till then. I wish you very happy learning. Thank you.